If you don't know what
Right.
decisions you made about yourself, you cannot change it. This is where you're talking about connecting to yourself, really understanding who you are. Good afternoon. This is Kourosh Pourmorady from kmpdivorce.com. I have a pleasure talking to one of my good friends, Miss Kerrie Jones. Hi, Kerrie.
Hi, Kourosh. How are you?
Very good, very good. Thank you very much. It's good to see you. I'm really excited that we can talk a bit about you and marriage conflicts, maybe some other issues that you're going to bring up. So, before we go into the few topics that I have in mind, why don't you tell us about yourself and your practice and your specialty?
Yes, so my name is Kerrie Jones. I am an associate marriage and family therapist and an associate professional clinical counselor. And I work in Southern California. Obviously, I service people throughout the state of California. And I specialize in clients who are struggling with anxiety, recovering from narcissistic abuse, young adults who are navigating the life transition from their youth into adulthood. I also do couples counseling, specializing mostly in betrayal, but all sorts of couples issues. And I focus on trauma. So, childhood trauma, sexual trauma, all sorts of sex related issues.
So you brought up narcissistic personality. Can you define that for us?
Oh, wow. That is a huge definition. And I often try to avoid going down the rabbit hole of trying to define a narcissist because, it's almost difficult to tell immediately who's a narcissist and who's not. But overall, someone with narcissistic personality disorder is someone who's um, a sociopath a bit. There's a lot of abusive traits and qualities, lots of control. And they present with this air of superiority, but deep down, they're very insecure people who really want to be loved, but don't know how to get it, right? And so they actually do the very opposite of what would be required to be loved by someone.
So if a person is in a relationship with a narcissistic personality, there are no signs. Are there any signs that they would look for? You said the person who's controlling, like they think they're better than everybody else, so they act like that.
Yeah, they sort of present as if they are above everyone else. And they'll also generally present as if we, so them and the person that they're with, right? They identify these traits and qualities in the person that they're pursuing or the person they're in the relationship with. And they often try to sort of convince the other person that we are better than everyone else. And there's no one else like you, right? And so this is why I want to be with you because we are superior. But in terms of signs, it's almost difficult to know in the beginning because, you know, one of the prevailing traits of abuse is control. A lot of people are honestly really familiar with control, right? From childhood, parents who were very controlling. So, someone who's controlling can present as endearing to them or familiar. It can feel like home. And so, it's almost difficult to really like, you can go down the rabbit hole of trying to identify what all the traits of a narcissistic person are, but, in the early stages of a relationship, it's really hard to tell in terms of, is this person a narcissist? What I really work with my clients on and the women who come to me is not necessarily trying to identify the qualities and the traits in the other person, but to really work on building up their relationship with themselves enough so that they can detect internally whether this even feels right, right? Because a lot of women will say, well, I didn't know, I didn't see the signs. But everyone woman I've worked with has felt the signs. They've sensed it. They've known better, but they didn't know what to do with it.
Individual who's being abused in a relationship, are you claiming that their spouse or their relationship is someone who has a narcissistic personality? That would be one of their traits.
Someone who's being abused in a relationship is ultimately being controlled, right? We're adults. We're not created to grow up and then to be controlled by someone else. Even as kids, honestly, we're not created to be controlled, right? Kids are born into families to learn how to love, to learn how to relate, so that they can grow up and go on to do that with other adults. Well, a kid who's been controlled in their families as a child will grow up to continue to be controlled in many ways. It's sort of a tough pill to swallow and it's hard to say, but there are a lot of parents who are well intentioned but are abusive because they are
Mm.
controlling. And that doesn't make those parents narcissistic either, right? So these are two
Obviously.
separate things.
Obviously, under the law, abuse is maybe defined. It is defined. It could be an emotional abuse, and it could be a physical abuse.
Yes.
So yeah, I can understand how a parent could be abusive,
Hmm.
by not handling the kid emotionally well. So
Exactly.
and try to control or over control. Yeah, I understand that. So I was reading your website. You have a great website. Okay,
Thank you.
one of them I noticed you were talking about strong connection with self. This is what you try to provide in your therapy. So talk about that. What does it mean that one person would have a strong connection with self?
Well, ultimately, when you have a strong connection with yourself, you trust yourself, right? You can lean into all the cues that take place in your body to let you know that something is happening or that you need something. So, most of us have been socialized and have learned to trust the common cues, right? When your belly starts to grumble, you know you're hungry and I need to go eat, right? When your bladder gets full, you feel that pressure, I need to go use the bathroom. Many of the other cues people tend to ignore, right? Especially when it comes to interpersonal or social cues. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like this. I want to leave. If someone requests something of you that you're not willing to give or that you don't really want to give, you say yes when you really want to say no. Often this builds lots of resentment, lots of anger,
Mm.
some aggression, right? Where people have a difficult time communicating with one another and interacting with other people, and they almost build sort of this wall of distrust. They feel a lack of safety because ultimately they're not trusting themselves. So it's not, often we look at relationships, all sorts of relationships, not just couples, as being able to trust one another. But if you can't trust yourself, it is difficult to understand how you can trust others. So, this connection that you're speaking of is ultimately being able to build and foster and nurture this relationship with yourself so much that it's like clockwork. My body said no, it's a no.
I love that. I know as I was growing up, I developed a lot of resentments because I was a very shy person,
Yeah.
and I didn't like it when people would talk to me. I would blush.
Hmm.
And right away, if anybody talked to me and it would make me uncomfortable, and this, I had a lot of insecurity because of that.
Yes.
And I know, it's very normal. A lot of young adults, as we're growing up, things happen in life that you,
Hmm.
you make a decision on, right? You make a decision about yourself. It is possible to change those decisions that you make about yourself, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I know that you can change those decisions that you make about yourself.
If you don't know what
Right.
decisions you made about yourself, you cannot change it. That's
Exactly.
where this is where you're talking about connecting to yourself, really understanding who you are.
Right. And that's where therapy comes in, right? There's other ways, but I think, as far, obviously, I'm a therapist, so I'm going to be a huge proponent of therapy. But there's relationships with other people, but often, again, if you have that mistrust, you're not going to really trust the feedback that you're getting from a friend or a family member because maybe this person has failed you before. But so that's why I recommend therapy. This is a place where you can begin to work on that. You can work on understanding and seeing those parts of you that you have misunderstood, that you may have even pushed away. Those decisions, like you say, you've made about yourself, so that you can clear things up and make better decisions that actually help you to step into the life you actually want to live, right? Because all of the decisions we're making with the intention that we want to live a happy and fulfilling and successful life, right? But often the decisions we make actually go against that. Rewiring those connections. So as you ask the question, can you sort of address these things? Can you change it? Of course you can. It just
Right.
takes some intentional focus and some time to work on all those decisions you've made about yourself from a very small child that have led to all the decisions that you've made that puts you in the state you're in right now that you're
Yeah.
probably not happy in.
So yeah, this is very informative because a lot of people think the way you are is the way you're always going to be.
Hmm.
And it's not necessarily true. You can change if you are, as you said, if you go through therapy and you work on yourself and you recognize and you realize and you become aware of your whatever shortcomings or decisions you made in your childhood. Let's talk about like couples therapy. What do you find to be the single most issue that comes up in a couple's conflict?
It's interesting you asked that question because, right, there are issues that everybody knows and sees on the surface, right? There's money, there may be sex, there's communication, there's in laws, there's all of these issues, right? And they're plentiful. And I see multiple of these issues even working with one couple. So, what I would say is the biggest issue in terms of couples is a lack of vulnerability. You marry this person or you decide to spend your life or to merge your life with this person. You care about them, you love them, but there's just a part of you that you don't let them in on, right?
Mm,
You're afraid that they may judge you. You're afraid that they may leave you if they know this part of you. There's all sorts of reasons why people hold back a portion of themselves from the person that they're with. The challenge, however, is that that part of you comes out anyway, right? And it comes out at the most inopportune times. It comes out in the most upsetting ways, right? It's what creates the conflict, right?
got it.
So, what many people are doing is like, I don't want you to see this part of me, but I see it anyway.
Sure.
And when I
Makes sense.
see it, it's ugly.
Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, as a child, we have learned not to hide things. A lot of kids don't want to show what they did wrong to their parents, so it carries on as we become adults.
You're hitting the
Yeah,
nail on the head. All of these things, pretty much, we can always go back to childhood and
go back to
find where it
childhood.
began. So I would say
Great.
that's the biggest conflict. It doesn't look like conflict, right? It looks like, from the personal perspective, it looks like I'm protecting the relationship. It looks like peace, but it is the catalyst for conflict,
Yeah.
all sorts of conflict.
If the spouse knows, if they know themselves well,
Hmm.
if you're like 22-year-old, you get married with another 22-year-old, you haven't even really, you don't even know who you are in this world, then you don't know how to deal with a relationship except what you've learned from your parents. Now, if you have parents that did not have a good relationship, you're going to bring that into your own life, correct?
Yeah, I think the only exception to that would be the child who grows up with very healthy parents, right? And they don't necessarily even have to be healthy I would think they need to be some relatively healthy with one another, but even one really strong, solid, healthy parent to that child who grows up
Uh-huh.
and meets their emotional needs and shows them love and helps them to be vulnerable in that relationship, that child is going to go into the world and look for that same type of relationship. So it's often, where you hear a woman who chooses a good man, right? A good spouse, they'll say, oh, he's just like her father, because she's sort of conditioned, and we all are conditioned to go after what we've experienced, how we've been formed. That would be the only exception, I think, for a young person to really go off and choose a mate.
Sure.
If they choose someone who's like a very healthy parent, it's very likely that they'll be able to continue to grow in that relationship and mitigate conflict as much as possible if they learn to do so.
Well, I think we're at the end of this. Tell me, Kerrie, is there the address that we have? You're on Pico Boulevard. Your practice is on Pico Boulevard, correct?
Yes, so that is where
Okay.
I do see some in-person clients. Most of my clients are virtual.
And you
Yes.
find that to be okay, right? Virtual meetings. That's not a problem.
No, it's not a problem for me. I know that there are people who have had issues with seeing a therapist virtually, but most of my clients who wanted to meet in person try virtual and they love it, and we never go back to in person. So that's sort of the way things have shaken out for me.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much. It was a pleasure talking with you, and I hope to see you again. And hopefully, we can get together and discuss more and give value to the people that watch your video and learn something from you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Have a good
You're
day.
welcome. You too.